Hello and welcome to the DWeb Decoded podcast, brought to you by the Filecoin Foundation. Today, live from Davos, where I am a special guest host. I'm Michael Casey. I'm the chairman of the Decentralized AI Society, of which Filecoin is one of our best and most and earliest members. So very happy to be bringing this to you. And I'm here with a friend, colleague, co-conspirator, collaborator. We've done various things over the years, David. This is David Shrier from Imperial College. David, you've just released a report on energy consumption as it pertains to, AI. We all have this story in our heads that the AI economy is growing exponentially, that it's going to reach some sort of massive amount of domination of the world. How the hell are we going to find the resources to power that?
One word, nuclear. Yeah. But I mean, I say that half jokingly, and I'll come back to that point, but we are at this inflection point where demand for AI is going geometric. This is skyrocketing. And AI is a decision people are making in seconds or minutes or weeks or months. So growth is on a monthly accelerated growth curve, but energy decisions are decades-long decisions. There's a 10-year lead time if you want to build a new power plant. And so how do we grapple with this already overstrained global energy grid and this exploding demand for AI? And the short-term answer is people have been using fossil fuels, and that has reversed a lot of the sustainability gains that companies like Google and Meta and Microsoft have had over the last few years, but that's not, pardon the pun, sustainable long-term. We need to come up with better answers. And so we have a lot of ideas, and I'm sure we'll get into it today, but what we're seeing is we're getting to a place where very soon a country will need to decide, do we run our national cloud or do we run AI? Do we run lights during the evening or do we run AI? And it's really that bad.
That does seem like a stark decision tree to go down. So what are the answers? But I take it there are certain places in the world that are better placed, right? Because we're talking about sustainable options. There are some places that are blessed with natural resources for renewable energy and so forth, others that are not so blessed. What does this mean from a geographic, kind of almost geopolitical perspective?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there are countries that are better equipped to deal with this. And we came up with a proprietary index, and we came up with two lists. One of them is just who in general has the power and the sort of technical know-how to be AI ready. And the second list is who's able to do it sustainably. And the top three countries on both lists are Sweden, Australia, and Canada. So I'm sure you appreciate as a native Australian that they are top of the list, but Australia has been very forward thinking about technology and about energy. Interestingly enough, also in the top 10 are countries like Malaysia. So Malaysia has a massive energy capability. They're adding about 500. We're hearing the helicopters.
We have the helicopters above us.
This is very exciting.
Are we good to keep going? We're going to keep going. All right. Yes.
Yeah. There are a lot of overflights right now as we sit here on the Filecoin Terrace. So we see that Malaysia is adding 500 gigawatts to their national energy grid over the next 5 years, and they have a lot of carbon sinks because they have a big seagrass reservoir offshore, which can serve as it's even better at sinking carbon than trees.
Wow. That's impressive. Okay, so one of the things I think is interesting about this question about energy and the idea that we're going to have to find resources elsewhere other than these big, traditionally very centralized. Wow, that's a loud helicopter. I think they're deliberately circling us right now.
It's got the Swiss military flag on it, so I think they must be hunting for someone who's gotten lost.
I don't think we are the target of their investigations, but in any case,
there's a guy with a gun hanging out of the side. That's interesting.
All right. Well, welcome to Davos.
Yes.
So, there's a really important parallel here between literally access to those resources and the centralization versus decentralization phenomenon, which, at the Decentralized AI Society, we care about a lot. Right?
Yes.
The idea that we have essentially aggregated massive amounts of control over data, control over compute, and ownership really of the capital as well.
Yes.
In the hands of really just 7 big companies.
Right.
Is a challenge, I would argue, not only to sort of innovation and economic progress, but also democracy. So pushing both, real resource power and economic power to the edge is actually a really constructive way to think about it. And so it seems like, to some extent, the resource challenges that AI faces generally may actually work in the favor of those who want that decentralizing to happen.
I think that's
Do you
right.
share with
I think
that?
that's absolutely correct. Yeah. So we also released a report very recently on sovereign AI, and you can download that at the same website at aicollab.org. And one of the things we looked at is particularly with first the Biden administration last week surprising everyone with a tech moratorium. Only 18 countries get the good stuff, and everyone else is either a second-class citizen or a no-class citizen. And Trump has already announced he's going to engage in a tech trade war. So with these actions by the U.S. government and the Magnificent Seven companies being U.S. companies, you have this sort of need for alternate solutions. And this is where the edge comes in. This is where open source comes in. And this is where edge computing comes in. If we have devices that are made by companies maybe that are not one of the Magnificent Seven, and those devices are living in many different places around at the edge, they're drawing different kinds of power. There are new solutions around lower cost edge computing, and they're leveraging open source software, which gets it out of central control.
So I want to get into that question because it brings us to ideas like self-sovereign AI and the idea that we can really frame a different model around ownership too. But before we go there, just a bit more on the energy.
It is a bit ironic that we're talking about the need for escaping central government control, and we have a government helicopter overflying us, buzzing our talk.
It's just a reminder of where we sit currently in the power structure of the world.
Seriously.
But you mentioned nuclear, right? So one of the things I've often thought about is how do we create frameworks in which countries that have access to renewable energy can actually really find it convenient to raise the capital, to finance, to build, and grow rapidly and use that because of, again, the movement of power and access and potentially leapfrogging of capacity of these otherwise poorer places through this. I used to think Bitcoin, for example, should be thought of as something to actually be used as a means to underwrite the development of renewable energy projects across the developing world. But now it could be AI, right?
Yeah.
And so how does it play out? I mean, if you've got, water resources, is that a play? Is it something that we can talk about, being run over solar arrays in sort of poorer villages, or is it got to be nuclear?
Well, no, nuclear is probably our best option, but it's not the only option, right? And there are these new small format nuclear reactors, which are safer, which are cheaper to build. Countries like Canada that have nuclear capability that are offering these reactors elsewhere are providing not only the reactors, but also technical assistance and financing to help people stand up their nuclear capability. But that's not the only answer. And so when we take a step back and look at what do you need for sovereign AI? What do you need to sort of get control of your AI? There are 5 critical inputs that we talk about in our report. So one of them is energy. That is absolutely a bottleneck and a throttleneck. The second is water, right? So you consume 1 bottle of water when every query that you run because it's needed for cooling the system. So countries that are up further north, like the Nordics, have an advantage as far as AI is concerned because they have lower cooling costs. The third one is carbon. I mentioned before.
So for atoms, right? We're talking about physical things, not digital stuff.
You need the last 2 are hardware and people.
Okay, so okay,
and so those are
all atoms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the people gets in the ideas.
People have all the fuzzy, the wet brain stuff as well, but they need it.
Then you layer on that software ecosystem, and that's where. Today, NVIDIA has global dominance, not only because of the chips, but also because there's an entire stack of software that has been built on top of the NVIDIA chips. And so if you want to do something like use a CPU to do AI compute at the edge, you're going to need a different software stack and hopefully an open source one. Yeah,
exactly. So that seems to be, so quite often, as I've been sort of floating the principles of decentralized AI out there and launching the society, I do get a number of sort of old hat AI, particularly in the LLM world. So, but it's impossible. You can't do machine learning in a distributed environment because the latency is going to kill you, et cetera, et cetera.
Just like you can't have decentralized money.
Exactly. Obviously you can't, right? I mean, bottom line is yes, the narrative tends to be self-serving, right?
Yes.
But it's also just this idea that, okay, well, let's think outside the box. Yes, if it's all built to the same algorithm and everything, it is the
We need different algorithms. Right. You're going to need to design different software.
Parallel compute, modular approaches, all that sort of stuff,
but
right?
we've been playing with this stuff stuff for years. So remember SETI at home? I mean, before we had Bitcoin decentralized compute, people were finding stars and looking for signals of alien life with little pieces of compute that were distributed across a vast network of computers. And the problems were broken down a little piece. Same thing with protein folding. You know, they broke this stuff down in little tiny pieces and sent it out to everyone's CPUs. And your idle compute time was used to help solve a big problem.
No, there's definitely models for it. And it's, so I think it's like, and look, we've seen, for example, like Nous research have done it. Then what's it called? The Prime Intellect. Both of them have produced some pretty large language models. I think 10 billion parameters for them. On the basis of a distributed
and language
network,
models are getting smaller too. We're getting smarter at how we design these things to run more efficiently. And again, that lends itself to the notion of it can run on a CPU or a network of CPUs on the edge that are sort of
a plug to our hosts, of course, is you're gonna have to have your storage run over a decentralized network, and so Filecoin's got you fixed up on that.
Data is the fuel for the AI engine.
Right. Okay. So, what does this mean for sovereign AI, which is the other, big theme here, and how does this play into it?
Well, and I'm going to go back to your question about how do we power all this stuff, and the answer for the sort of AI policy question is very similar to the answer for the sustainable power and climate policy question, which is governments need to make it easier to do business. Governments need to attract foreign direct investment and then make it easy to set up a company and actually get some economic gains from setting up the company to incentivize private capital. Government can be catalytic capital. So I've done some successful public-private partnerships in Australia with academia and government and private sector. So MIT and the government of South Australia and Westpac came together around setting up a smart city initiative in Adelaide. But you can use those models to help engage private capital, which should be 10x or 100x what you get from the government. So you don't have to break government budgets to do this, but you do have to make it easier to do business. And that will accelerate this capital into the space, because frankly, there are a lot of large pools of capital right now that cannot find enough investment opportunities to go into these multi-trillion-dollar sovereign funds. They're looking to write $1 billion check if they can.
So I've been thinking about this as well in the context of the refrain that over the years we've always heard from, particularly in Europe, but elsewhere as well. Like, how do we build our own Silicon Valley? We want to have an innovation hub like that of the Bay Area, right? And I actually think that probably the way to leapfrog right now is to not think like that at all. Actually, it is to try to embrace something for your citizenry that allows them to participate and grow. So it is data rights and sort of new ideas around property and getting away from the Biden EO type instincts of having this small group of AIs that you're going to regulate and allowing these smaller players to actually have an environment, a sandbox environment, whatever you want to call it, in which they can operate, right?
Well, exactly. And so the one way to think about it, I mean, this is what was so exciting about the crypto revolution, is that we had a new way of financing innovation. And suddenly you had innovation clusters popping up in places not Silicon Valley, like Toronto or Bermuda or Singapore or Dubai, or there are places all over the world that were not historically these sort of tech funding hubs that suddenly began funding tech. And so we can take that a step further in this sort of new age of AI. That's a big opportunity because it's impossible to recreate Silicon Valley. So Annalise Saxenian has done fantastic work writing about innovation clusters, and everyone's trying to recreate. You can't recreate it. I was part of building up the New York tech cluster. When I first got involved in it, 100 people could fit into a room, and that was everyone in VC in New York. And now it's the second largest venture capital hub in the US, but it's a different hub than the Valley.
Right.
And so you can't recreate the Valley, but you can create an innovation capability and decentralized technology as long as it promotes interactions, as long as it promotes the interchange of ideas. That's part of the genius of Silicon Valley. As long as it promotes capital formation.
We don't need the geographic proximity to have that.
As long as you have the ideas and the capital forming around, and we've already seen $2 trillion of value be created in the crypto world off of this decentralized model. I think we can bring it to AI.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you, David Shrier, for joining me in this delightful setting. Thank you, Filecoin, for allowing me to take over from Aaron and run riot with your podcast. And we'll see you again some other time. Thank you. Bye.